Take away the stone. It's such a simple command. It's so ordinary. It's so practical. It's physical. You can imagine the people that were looking there at each other, kind of hesitating just for a moment, and then stepping forward to do it. Hands on cold rock and muscles straining. The slow grinding shift of something heavy that was set in place days ago. And then later, after Lazarus stumbles out, after the shock and the gasps of disbelief, Jesus says something else just as ordinary, just as practical. Unbind him and let him go. That's the part that has been catching me all week. Because if we're honest, we tend to focus on that dramatic moment, the miracle, the voice of Jesus calling to the tomb, "Lazarus, come out." We imagine that moment. We imagine the silence that might have followed it, the tension, and then the impossible becoming possible. But Jesus doesn't do everything in this story. He doesn't roll away that stone, although I'm pretty sure he could have. He doesn't unwrap Lazarus. He calls him to life, yes, but the rest, that is given for the people, that's given to the people standing there to do. And I think that's where we live. We know something about stones, don't we? I mean, we know what it's like to have something heavy settled across the entrance of our lives. Grief that will not move, fear that has taken up residence, old wounds that have hardened over time, regret, shame, anger, weariness, just plain old weariness. Sometimes it's just a dull, gray sense that life, as it once felt so vivid, has gone quiet inside us. We've all had those moments. We've even had those seasons when something in us feels off, when it's easier to stay where we are than to imagine what it would take to move that stone out of our way. And over the years, I've asked those questions from this very pulpit. What stone needs to be rolled away in your life? And what has you bound up? And what has you feeling less alive? And you know what? Those are still really good questions. But this week, I kept coming back to a different one. Not just what tomb am I in, but where am I standing in this story? Because in this story, most of the people are not Lazarus. Most of the people are standing outside the tomb, watching and waiting and listening to Jesus, and then being asked to do something. Take away the stone. Unbind him. Lazarus has a kind of helplessness in this story that I find strangely comforting. I mean, he doesn't raise himself. He can't even walk out on his own without Jesus calling him out of that tomb. And once he does come out, once life does return, he still can't free himself. He's alive, but he's still bound, wrapped up and entangled, unable to move freely in this new life he's been given again. And so Jesus turns not to Lazarus, but to the community. You, unbind him, set him free. Which means that resurrection, at least in this story, is not a solo event. New life is not something we achieve on our own. Freedom is not something we accomplish by sheer will of effort or insight. It's something we are given, and it's something that we complete together. I think one of the quiet truths of being human is that we often don't realize that we are not fully alive until something shifts. We get used to things the way they are. We adapt. We learn how to live around those tight places in our lives. The numb places, the places that don't quite feel alive anymore. We accommodate the weight of that stone. We adjust to our wrappings. And we do the same thing with each other. We get used to one another's tombs. We get used to the places where people are still all bound up by grief, by addiction, by loneliness, by fear, by whatever it may be, and we stop expecting anything different. Oh, that's just the way they are, we say. We stop imagining that something could change. We stop noticing even. It becomes normal for others and for us. But I'm here to tell you it is not normal to be wrapped up in grave clothes. It is not normal to live sealed up behind a stone. It is not the life God intends for any of us. What strikes me is that Jesus does not say, Lazarus, come out and fix yourself up a little bit. He does not say, now that you're alive, you go and take care of the rest. He looks at a people that are around him and he says, in effect, you are part of this. You are part of what happens next. Which means that if someone is going to be unbound, someone else has to step close enough to touch the wrappings. Someone has to be willing to get their hands involved. Someone has to help. And that raises a harder question for us. Not just where do I need help, but where am I being asked to help? Who is still stuck in a tomb, waiting for someone to remind them that life is possible? Who is already out, but still bound up in ways that make it hard to move, hard to breathe? Where have we gotten so used to the way things are that we have stopped hearing Jesus' voice? Take away the stone. Unbind him. This is where the gospel stops being abstract, because it's one thing to talk about the resurrection in a grand theological way. It's another thing entirely to realize that it might look like showing up for someone when it's inconvenient. It might look like having a hard conversation. It might look like offering forgiveness or asking for it. It might look like refusing to give up on someone. It might look like simply staying close when others turn away. Unbinding is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it takes time to loosen those wrappings. Sometimes it takes more than one person. Sometimes it takes a whole community. And that is where it becomes a word for the church. Because we're so often tempted to think of faith as something personal. Something that happens inside each of us. My relationship with God, my prayer life, my growth, my healing. And all of that matters. But this story will not let us stay there. Because in John's gospel, the life that Jesus gives is completed in the community. The miracle is not finished until someone rolls away that stone, until someone loosens the cloth from Lazarus' hands, until someone unwinds the linen from his face so he can see again, until someone helps him walk, until someone stays with him long enough to help him find his footing again in this renewed life. The church is not a collection of individuals each managing our own spiritual lives. The church is a people, and we are a people who roll away stones, a people who unbind one another, a people who refuse to let others remain in a tomb. So maybe this Lent, especially as we stand so close to Holy Week, The question is not only what keeps me bound, but maybe the question is also, where is Jesus inviting me to participate in someone else's freedom? Where is he asking me to step closer instead of stepping back? Where is he saying to us, not just me, but to us, you are part of this? Because the truth is, if we're honest, we're all in more than one place in this story. There are parts of us that are still in the tomb, and there are parts of us that have heard Jesus' voice and we're beginning to step out into the light. And there are parts of us that are standing outside being called to help. We need each other at every stage of that journey. And the good news in all of this, the really, really good news, is that burden of resurrection does not rest on us. Jesus is the one who calls. Jesus is the one who brings life where there was none. Jesus is the one who stands at the tomb and weeps and loves and refuses to let death have the last word. But then, astonishingly, he turns to us. And he gives us a role to play. Not because he needs us, by the way, but because that is what love does. It draws us in. It makes us participants. It makes us part of one another's lives. So hear this today. If you are feeling bound, if something in you feels wrapped up and sealed off and not quite alive, Jesus is calling you by name. Come out. And if you're standing outside the tomb and you're in a place to help, even a little, Jesus is calling you too. Take away the stone. Unbind them. Let them go. Because the truth is, Jesus is still calling people out of death. Still, right now, in ways large and in ways small, in ways visible and in ways invisible. And more often than not, he is looking at us, at this community, at this church, and saying, you, come closer. There's something for you to do here. Roll away the stone. Unbind them. Let them go. And in doing so, we might just find that we too are being set free. Amen.